Hello, everybody. Paul Cradle here. So, I want to talk to you about something that happened to me just recently with regards to ham radio, or more specifically, talking to ham radio operators, mostly, I presume, on some internet forums. And I gotta tell you, uh, first and foremost, you gotta remember about a hobby. See, I made a mistake. You got to remember about a hobby. Why do people do a hobby? They do it to get something out of it. Now, you can't, you're forbidden to get any financial gain from ham radio. It's not a practical means of communications anymore now that we have the internet. I mean, it's certainly not efficient in terms of energy, in terms of the technical knowledge you would need. Basically, ham radio is there to to make the hams feel good about being hams, right? So when you're going to interact with a ham, you got to remember ham radio operators have to feel good about ham. And if they're a licensed ham radio operator and you're not, they have to be right about everything. And they have quick snap judgments, I think, especially with regards to people who are not licensed in the hobby. They have to be right. That's just the way in-group psychology works. Now, I thought that this was going to be more of a like an open, kind of welcoming group that would just like to share knowledge, with anybody, but and maybe they do. I'm sure most of them do. But here's the big mistake I made. I don't want a license. I consider my what I would do in radio, my radio hobby to be ham radio because it's amateur, right? Maybe I should just say amateur radio because I think radio is kind of cool. I've always been fascinated with radio ever since I was a kid. With AM broadcasts at night going across the country, and I had a police scanner when I was a kid. Even that was pretty cool. There are just so many things about the radio that that can serve as a hobby in so many different ways, and it's fascinating. It can be interesting. But I really don't want to go through the trouble of being a ham radio operator. It just seems like the just I don't want to say dumb because it isn't, but to me, it just seems like a dumb thing to have. Like, why would you want a ham radio? Okay, if you do. I mean, if you do, you do. That's fine. I'm not laughing at you, but for the people who don't and wouldn't, you know what I'm talking about. Like, why would you? You get it too, that it's also okay not to. It's also okay to, for you, think it's dumb. I don't think it's dumb for the people who do it. But I think a lot of the people who don't do it, the reason they don't have one is because it would be dumb if they did. I reserve that right to say that it's, for me, dumb. And for others who don't do it, it's probably because they consider it kind of a dumb thing to have. Why would you bother buying these materials? I know the test is easy. You could probably be brain dead now and get an amateur radio license, but I just don't want one. I just don't. Okay, and that here's the thing that is gonna really get under the skin, I think, of a lot of ham radio operators who have to know everything in relation to someone who's not a licensed ham. I want to do part 15 unlicensed transmissions. I want to do a radio hobby, part of which includes transmission, even transmission that can be very, very weakly received, but nonetheless considered received very far away. I'd like to do an ionospheric bounce and experiment with different frequency bands and ranges and transmission modulation modes, all these things that are in the hobby. I want that too, but I don't. I want to experiment with that, see, but I don't want a hobby. I don't want a license. So the way I see it is that I have full range, free reign to actually get all of the satisfaction that the hobby has to offer with enough patience and at a low enough power, but without having to get a license to do that. Now, granted, I might not because it's not going to be, I'm not going to get, the signal's not going to get out very strongly very far. I might not be able to make CQ contacts or something like that. But again, I don't want to. Like, really, why would you want to meet somebody? Okay. Why? To those who do, that's fine. Not knocking what you do, but for those who don't, again, you get it. You can laugh. Why would you want to? Okay, it's this year. This year, why would you want to make a contact with somebody over a ham radio? Meet somebody over ham radio? Like, there's no, I mean, if you don't, it's okay to think that's kind of dumb. It is. If you don't want to do it because you think it's dumb, that's fine. Okay. But I think the thing that really ruffles the feathers of ham radio operators is that they don't know, but oh, wait, stop there. They have to know everything radio, right? Because they're licensed operators. But no, they don't know, unfortunately, that you don't need a license to do a lot of low power transmissions um, on on very many different frequency bands. There's not only the ISM bands and low-for, med-for, high-for. There are part 15 transmissions that are allowed at varying signal strength levels all over the spectrum. Now, granted, there are some forbidden frequencies, except for spurious emissions, the FCC says, but you have a lot of free reign as long as you don't bother anybody with your transmissions, as long as it doesn't cause harmful interference that somebody licensed out there doesn't want. Now, if you lower your power level low enough, see, this is the thing ham radio operators can't get. If you want to check with them for their technical expertise and you want to ask them about and make sure how how little power should I send out to make sure that I don't bother anybody, and to make sure that my signal is practically undetectable to anybody who doesn't already know it's there and knows where to look for it. They think that you're trying to transmit illegally. Whenever a ham hears the word unlicensed transmission, especially in a frequency that's in the ham bands, they think illegal. They just do not understand that you could want to do radio experimentation at low power and not need a license, even on frequencies that are not usually considered license free and are not don't usually come to mind when you think license free, unlicensed. But you can, and I made this mistake. Guys, I think I was barking up the wrong tree and talking to ham radio operators about how to transmit without a license. They just they can't. Okay, they're hams, they're in ham world. They're proud of their rigs. They've got all this equipment and everything. They're invested in it. They identify with it. You, you can't just go, you're barking up the wrong tree if you go and ask a ham, hey, how do I, how can I do some cool, how can I do stuff without a license? And what I wanted to do is actually, I think, kind of more, kind of a cooler experiment that you could do than just talking to somebody on a ham radio. What I'm thinking of is kind of like SETI or like the Hubble Deep Field image, where you just listen for a weak signal that you know is there, that you know somebody is transmitting far away but very weakly, and you just you just listen and you feed it into a computer, maybe a sound card, and you time average it so that you can get so that over time information starts to come in very slowly, uh, proving that you didn't need high power to, technically to do ham radio. You just have to be more patient and you have to have somebody already there who knows your signal is already going to be there to listen for it because you intend to be undetected, right? Um, you're not trying to hide anything, but it's part 15, so you don't want to bother anybody. You want to make sure you don't bother anybody. And part of the fun of the experiment would be to just see, can you really detect and extract information from a signal that's so weak you can only get the information from averaging over time, and it has to come in very slowly. And I think the answer is yes. Over time, so the data transmission rate will be very low, but over time you'll be able to fish that out of the noise. That's the experiment. And to me, that's the same as ham radio. It's just ham radio over time, unlicensed, because there's no need for a license. You're not going to bother anybody at these levels. But guys, leave hams alone. If you're not going to get licensed, if you don't want to get licensed, most of them immediately think you intend to be an illegal transmitter. They don't get it. See, because they have to go and get the license for what they want to do, they have to be licensed for what they're going to do to be legal. They have to get licensed. So they just assume that if you consider yourself to be doing ham radio, but unlicensed, whatever you're doing must be illegal. It's not illegal. It's part 15. Part 15 allows you to do many things that ham radio operators, many cool things actually that you could do with part 15 that ham radio operators who are they feel, I don't blame them. You got to feel good about something, right? They feel good about their hobby, they identify with it and everything. So you can't talk to them about not having a license. They vested too much into having a license, you know. You know, I've considered maybe I should just go get a license, but nah, it's just dumb. I mean, the whole idea where, it's like I would rather as part of the challenge, don't get a license. I mean, to me, that just seems like kind of part of the hobby because you can do things without a license. It's not like fishing or something where you can't really go fishing anywhere without a license, except if it's private property or something. But generally speaking, you can't do anything fishing without a license. People don't know that about the radio spectrum. If you want to do radio experiments, they think you got to get a license. And they think that you'd be communicating in real time or something. No. I mean, I've even had an idea where I was going to send one audio sample per second and something like 2 seconds of audio per day transmitted to a friend far away, you know. And you could do this with a low power signal if if the rate was low enough that you could just fish it out of all that noise and then at the end of the day speed it up to normal and you got your 2 seconds of audio and there would be all of that noise would just average out. It would just average out to about zero. It would just be amplitude noise, basically. Probably like bell curve noise, whatever you call it. Um, so guys, you know, leave the hams alone. Let them do their thing. If you're not gonna be a licensed ham with a call sign and everything, they think that what you're gonna do is illegal. But man's a man has interests, if there's got to be things that you can do. But honestly speaking, I find something like painting. I just find, painters to be generally speaking, you don't have to have a license to be a painter. And or a model trains. I mean, nobody cares if you have model trains. And they're not going to be so snooty about having a model train license or not because it doesn't exist. Anybody can do model trains. But man, ham radio, when it comes to becoming a licensed ham, man, it's like those guys are driven somehow to be ham radio operators. And once they're a licensed ham radio operator, that their technical knowledge has to be right. And like and anybody who's unlicensed is just a total noob dummy radio dummy to them. Like somebody on the forums just, wasn't insisting to me that I didn't know what bandwidth was. Well, I, I kind of do. I mean, I've studied what an AM radio signal, looks like and how much space it takes on the spectrum and why. And, you know, I just don't like I said, I just don't want a license. I just don't want it. That doesn't how does that make me stupid? Why does the licensed ham have to be right? But I guess just the way that psychology works, when you've got a group like that, uh, them telling you you're wrong is actually consistent with you being right. But the way that it's set up, they can't stand that. So you can't tell from talking to them whether you're right or wrong about something because being right is consistent with them telling you you're wrong. And that's just the way it is. Don't do ham radio. Don't, guys. I think I don't want to see people go through the transformation of becoming a ham radio operator. Do painting, do model trains, whatever else you're into, especially things that don't require a license. Or if you want to do radio, do part 15 transmissions, really low power, and don't tell any hams about it. They don't want to hear about it. They hate that. Whew. All right, guys. Cheers.